Now, according to reports this morning, a report commissioned by the federal opposition has concluded that the government's proposed emissions trading scheme will not cost Australia jobs, but workers will earn less in the long run. The study by the Centre for International Economics also found there hasn't been adequate research conducted on the impact of the ETS.
The government says, contrary to the coalition's interpretation, the report actually supports the overall design of the scheme. For more, the opposition's emissions trading spokesman Andrew Robb joins us now from Canberra. Andrew Robb, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Joe.
Now, in light of this report, is it possible the opposition will opt to support a carbon tax instead of an ETS?
Well, what the report does is, remarkably in a sense, it confirms that the government's rushing headlong into a scheme, insisting on something being finalised in June, yet they've got no idea, they haven't done the work to establish, what might be the impact on jobs in the next 20 years. They've done no work really on what might be the impact on industries or regions, or whether in fact they've got the right scheme. And what David Pearce in this report has said is there should, as a matter of urgency, other schemes should be compared with what they've got on the table to establish whether this is in fact the best way to go about it. So the onus is on the government to do some fairly heavy lifting to try and correct the very deep flaws that are in this scheme.
Well, the Business Council of Australia says the onus is on the coalition as well to do some pretty heavy negotiating to ensure some sort of scheme gets up to ensure that businesses get some certainty.
Well, the only certainty at the moment is that there will be massive unemployment generated by this scheme. We've seen now, Joe, nearly every day now for the last 2 or 3 months, captains of industry have been coming out, people who are actually running major companies, saying that there will be tens of thousands of jobs put at risk if this scheme comes in its current form. Now, the government has to take heed of that. This report confirms that the government had not done the work to find out. There's no analysis been done about what will be the impact in the first 20 years. The only analysis they've done is what will be the impact in 50 years' time. Well, in the long term we're all dead. Industry and people want to know what is the impact over the next 20 years. How will this affect their lives? How can they accommodate this? Will industries be forced offshore? Will we reduce emissions? Now, none of that work has been done, and, it seems remarkable that the government can sit there and insist that they make no changes. And, again, this morning we heard Penny Wong saying that she accepts this report. Well, this report is saying the government has got a mountain of things to do before we can be confident that the scheme will not destroy thousands of jobs and will in fact do something at all about CO2 emissions.
But this report also concludes that none of the issues raised should be an impediment to establishing a carbon price in Australia. So will you work with the government to ensure some sort of scheme is established?
Well, what it does say, and we've accepted that there should be a carbon price, and there should be a carbon price around the world. In fact, we were out with a scheme 12 months before the government, you might recall, before the last election.
So can we tie you down now on the alternative that you are proposing? What changes do you want to the government scheme?
Well, we are taking this report. The government's got a major proposal on the table. The biggest structural change, perhaps in our history, is being proposed. That's on the table. We've got this report from the Centre for International Economics to help us determine what is the best way forward. We've got a major Senate inquiry which is nearly completed. A lot of very good evidence coming through there. When we have properly assessed all of this material, we will come out with our firm alternative or the changes that need to be made. In the meantime, the government should be doing its own work to try and overcome the many problems that have been identified by industries and the many risks that are now embodied in their scheme, which might mean that tens of thousands of people, their jobs are at risk at a time, when we've got perhaps the worst financial meltdown in 80 years.
So even this report is calling for more modelling and analysis. Will you commit to a scheme before that subsequent modelling and analysis is done?
Well, we will undertake, by the time the substantive debate comes about on the government's proposal, to put down what we think should be done, how it should be done, Our objective is to ultimately get a price of carbon, but this report also confirms that there is more than one tool in the climate change toolbox. The report, establishes that there's a whole range of complementary measures that can be taken in the built environment or the commercial building sector and other areas, none of which are in the scheme at the moment, amongst individuals out there in the community. So much that could be done in complementary measures to reach the targets. Now, all of these things are things that we are looking very, very seriously at, and it will be part of the alternative proposals that we will put in front of the government in the next few weeks.
And it seems a long time before the government will get coalition support. Andrew Robb in Canberra, thanks very much for talking to us this morning.
My pleasure, Joe. Thank you.